WrestleMania week. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, general ages, it is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. We are approximately four, count them, 4 days away from the grandest stage of them all, the showcase of the immortals, WrestleMania XL live Saturday, April 6th, 2024, Sunday, April 7th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming live exclusively on Peacock from Lincoln Financial Field, the home of the NFL's Philadelphia Eagles. In honor of this special week, whereas the great Intercontinental Champion, the Ring General Gunther, would say that we honor everything spectacular about the great sport of professional wrestling. Thursday and Friday this week, I am going to preview night one on Thursday, night two on Friday of WrestleMania 40. But today, as always, we are in collaboration with the one, the only Voltage Live. My social media links are in the description below. I am going to be revisiting, as this is obviously the 40th anniversary of WrestleMania. We are going to be taking a look at WrestleManias over the past decade, the past 10 years, the WrestleMania 30s, if you will. From WrestleMania 30 all the way to WrestleMania 39, I am going to be counting backwards from 10 to 1. I am going to be ranking those WrestleMania events. Now, in the case of WrestleManias 36, 37, 38, and 39, those are obviously those two WrestleManias that started the two-night events. In that case, I'm going to be combining night one and night two and giving my scores for those four WrestleManias as a whole. So I'm very excited. I haven't done a list like this in a long time, specifically for the podcast. I've done it in my head, just thinking, but as I was going through, looking back at the matches, looking back at the notes, I'm taking everything into account as well. Staging, the theme song, the anticipation for the event, and obviously the event itself. So without further ado, let's count down the top WrestleManias of the 30s. And I think number 10 is a little bit unfair because all of these other WrestleManias that we're going to talk about, and obviously WrestleMania 40 that takes this place this weekend at the Wink, had fans. And so I think because of it, even though it was not necessarily the worst WrestleMania on this list, which makes, in my opinion, number 9 look like a complete shamble of a WrestleMania, which it basically was. I think it would be unfair, in my opinion, not to put WrestleMania 36 at number 10 just because of the fact that it had no fans. But both nights of this WrestleMania and memorable matches, and the build to this card before the COVID-19 pandemic took over the world. I mean, we had Drew McIntyre looking to finally fulfill his destiny and win the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar. We had Roman Reigns, big dog Roman Reigns, against Goldberg for the Universal Championship over on SmackDown. What about Edge's return match for the first time in over a decade? Edge and Randy Orton were going to square off. You had Kevin Owens against the Messiah, Seth Rollins. You had the Women's Royal Rumble winner, Charlotte Flair, taking on the NXT champion, Rhea Ripley, as WWE was trying to build NXT against AEW and make NXT seem like a big deal. Shayna Baszler getting a huge push, taking on Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. You had Morrison and Miz against the Usos, against the New Day in a ladder match for the tag titles. John Cena against the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, as Bray Wyatt tried to extinguish his WrestleMania 30 loss. And then, of course, you have Undertaker and AJ Styles. All that we knew prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. The hype for this WrestleMania in Tampa that was going to be, April 5th, 2020 on a Sunday night, one night WrestleMania was real. It was certainly more hype than 35 and 34. The theme song obviously started here with the weekend and Binding Lights and all that, and we were anticipating the pirate ship to take place at WrestleMania 36. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, folks, we were able to get 2 nights of WrestleMania. It made this card a lot more digestible. And for my money, for night one, that Undertaker AJ Styles Boneyard match was the first cinematic match we've ever fully seen in WWE history. To date, it is The Undertaker's last match that he competed in World Wrestling Entertainment, and it was just a spectacle. It was something that we did not expect, and at a time when there was no sports on besides the Michael Jordan Last Dance documentary, it was surely entertaining. I think a forgotten match on night one was the John Morrison, Jimmy Uso, Kofi Kingston triple threat ladder match. This was a match where Jimmy Uso tore his ACL in because of COVID restrictions. It was decided that instead of a six-person ladder match, let's do a triple threat, one member from each team. It was an incredible match. Morrison was able to retain the SmackDown tag team titles. Jimmy Uso tears his ACL, which leads to Jey Uso going solo. And obviously, if it wasn't for Roman Reigns bowing down because of COVID-19, we would have not seen Braun Strowman capture the Universal Championship from Goldberg on night one. We would have not seen the tribal chief Roman Reigns carry WWE for nearly 4 years. Also, as I mentioned on night one, Becky Lynch retained the Raw Women's Championship against Shayna Baszler in a little bit of a surprise at the time. And Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, where Kevin Owens jumped off the WrestleMania sign, threw Seth Rollins through a table in a match that was a lot of trash talking between Owens and the Messiah with Buddy Murphy by its side. You want to talk about a strange time in wrestling history. This was it. But a very fascinating match between two great workers who had a bloody feud going on. Then, of course, night two, in my opinion, was memorable for many reasons. You had Drew McIntyre fulfilling his destiny. Now, after that, he faced the Big Show, and we're not going to talk about that. You can debate me on whether or not that should be part of WrestleMania 36 or not. I say it's pretty much forgotten in WWE history. But Drew McIntyre, after taking multiple F5s from the Beast, after taking multiple Claymores, that is Lesnar, it took 4 Claymores by McIntyre to put down the Beast and fulfill his destiny at WrestleMania 36. Now, I remember going into this match, I would argue on air with not only my buddy Michael Reiner, who I brought on the show last week, but our buddy Ben Pagatti over at TV2 in Kent, Ohio, when I was on the air at Black Shore Radio. When we talked about this match, I said I was not so certain if Drew McIntyre was going to fulfill his destiny at WrestleMania 36. I did not know if McIntyre at that time was able to be on top of the mountain, be that leader in WWE. And boy, was I wrong as Drew stepped up during that time. Then, if you thought the Boneyard match was an A+ match, which I absolutely did, I almost enjoyed all of the cinematic matches WWE did. How about taking a route down an alternative history of John Cena's career? And I would argue one of the most memorable matches, not only in WrestleMania history, but potentially the most memorable match in the long, great history of the legend. Rest in peace, will soon be a WWE Hall of Famer. Maybe not this year, but potentially next year as the headliner. The great, and I don't say this word often, the great Wyndham Rotunda, aka Bray Wyatt. We also had Edge's return in a last man standing match that took place 37 minutes, went all over the arena, ended on top of a WB production truck with a concerto. Edge versus Randy Orton, which obviously then led us to the greatest wrestling match ever between Edge and Randy Orton at Payback. And this was surreal. I don't care if it was without fans or not. You guys know that Edge, aka Adam Copeland, now in All Elite Wrestling, is my favorite professional wrestler of all time. I cried on April 11th, 2011, the night that Edge retired as World Heavyweight Champion on Monday Night Raw after a debilitating neck injury. I cried again, even without fans, seeing my man return, not only at WrestleMania, but obviously the Royal Rumble a few months earlier in Houston. And then Bayley retained the SmackDown Women's Championship. This was at the time when her and Sasha Banks were running roughshod. They would eventually win the Women's Tag Team titles as well. Bayley retains the SmackDown Women's title in a fatal five-way match. Also, Charlotte Flair captured the NXT Women's Championship from Rhea Ripley. Again, I'm not going to go over all of the matches and events from these shows, just sort of the highlights from what I remember, mostly from memory. But again, with this show was great and it was very entertaining for what it was at the time when we did not have an audience inside the performance center. But because of the fact it did not have an audience, I think it automatically has to go to number 10 on the list. Okay, let's go to WrestleMania 32 because this was one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, at least in modern history, in my opinion. Now, it may be no fault of its own. If you remember in November, Seth Rollins tore his ACL. Randy Orton was injured and out. John Cena was injured and out. There were many other wrestlers that were unable to compete on this card. It completely changed the entire WrestleMania 32 landscape, and it turned out to be a horrific show with a very boring ending. And this was one of the first WrestleManias that went about 5 hours in length, and boy, did it really drag. How about my favorite match of the night was when they turned the former, Divas Championship into the Women's Championship, and three of the four original Horsewomen, Charlotte Flair, who was the champion walking in, she retained against Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks. They absolutely tore the house down as almost the beginning of the new women's revolution in WWE, which took off in the summer of 2015, really culminated here at WrestleMania 32, with Lita delivering the new women's championship, which would soon soon after turn into the Raw Women's Championship, Charlotte Flair being on top. An incredible opening ladder match for the IC title at this event, where Zack Ryder would push down The Miz and capture the Intercontinental Championship in a surprise to everyone. This match also featured Stardust, aka Cody Rhodes, as well as the WrestleMania debut to future stars Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. It was an incredible ladder match, and again, in my opinion, besides Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha, went down from there. How about Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar being in basically a no holds barred match that should have been better than it was? Mostly it was Lesnar destroying Dean Ambrose. A weird match on this card. The Undertaker took on Shane McMahon in a Hell in a Cell match. If you remember, Shane McMahon was away from the company for about 7 years, came back. The storyline was he wanted control of Raw, and Vince would give it to him if he could beat The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell. Undertaker ended up winning this very lengthy match, and of course involved Shane McMahon jumping down from the top of the cell, crashing through the announce table. An incredible spot. I mean, this show, Shane McMahon was lucky to not suffer debilitating injuries from that spot, but ultimately it was a very slow match, especially for Hell in a Cell. And Bray Wyatt, was another guy we mentioned, along with John Cena and Randy Orton and Seth Rollins, who was injured. And so, because of that, Eric Rowan, who was the only healthy member of the Wyatt family at the time, took on The Rock after Dwayne announced the attendance. Obviously, this was a big deal. It was in AT&T Stadium. Um, at that time surpassing WrestleMania 3 for the most attendance in WrestleMania history. I believe that record still holds today. John Cena came down and, helped out The Rock. A nice callback from the WrestleMania 28 and 29 feuds. But ultimately, it really did nothing for us. And then Roman Reigns and Triple H had a lengthy main event where everybody knew that Roman Reigns was going to take down the final boss, Triple H, who had inserted himself into the Royal Rumble that year, won the World Championship because the group, the League of Nations, who, by the way, got involved earlier in the night, they got beat down by Hall of Famers Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, and Mick Foley after a match between the New Day and the League of Nations, which, of course, involved the likes of Wade Barrett, Sheamus, Rusev, Alberto Del Rio. Um, and so, yeah, that happened at this event. But again, Roman Reigns becoming the undisputed champion, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion at the end of WrestleMania 32 to a chorus of boos because fans were not ready to see Reigns become champion. They wanted Dean Ambrose to become champion at the Roadblock event in March with a very close near fall against Triple H at that time. But ultimately, the game, who was playing an ultimate heel, was the victor in that match before dropping the championship to Roman. Again, this was a very boring card. It did feature the debut of AJ Styles at WrestleMania, and he lost to Chris Jericho. Not one of the most memorable WrestleManias in history. Now, I'll say this, the next one on our list is WrestleMania 34. And I would argue there's more memorable moments at this WrestleMania than any other WrestleMania of the 30s. I did not think this show was incredibly terrible at all, but I just think it speaks to the quality of WrestleManias that we've gotten over the last decade that this is number 8 on the list. First of all, it featured an incredible opening match for the Intercontinental Championship between Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, and The Miz. Just an incredible opening match that featured all the spots you could think of. Rollins eventually taking home the victory. Those three worked out great together. One of the main storylines in this WrestleMania was John Cena trying to call out The Undertaker. And we hadn't seen The Undertaker since he lost his WrestleMania 33 match to the big dog Roman Reigns in the main event. So John Cena had taken on Kane before that. He'd taken on others. He called out The Undertaker and said that he was going to sit in the crowd during WrestleMania, which Cena did for the first part of the show. It's one of those memorable moments in WrestleMania history, I would argue. I think the match of the night was Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle. And again, this was Ronda Rousey's debut as a wrestler on the main roster. And the fact for her to get in the ring with two of the best in Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, as well as her tag team partner being Kurt freaking Angle, the wrestling machine. And, Rousey and Stephanie McMahon obviously lit it up. Kurt Angle and Triple H lit it up. There was a moment where Rousey got physical with the game and took him down. All great things. Ronda Rousey looked great in her in-ring debut. It would lead to her dominating the Raw Women's division, her capturing the Women's Championship from Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam. Speaking of Alexa Bliss, she walked into this event as champion. She lost her championship to Nia Jax. Braun Strowman and John Cone's son Nicholas. Now, if you remember, Strowman said he could beat The Bar, who was, of course, Sheamus Cesaro, the Raw Tag Team Champions at the time. Braun Strowman said he could beat them by himself in a handicap match. But the storyline for this match was the rules stated that Braun Strowman, because it was a tag team match for the tag team titles, he had to have a partner. So Strowman said, okay, I'll just find anybody in the crowd. And he ended up picking out, which ended up being Nicholas, a 10-year-old WWE fan who, of course, we all know is the son of referee John Cone. And Braun Strowman and Nicholas won the Raw Tag Team titles in one of the most heartfelt moments in the history of this showcase of the Immortals. This event also included the return of Daniel Bryan, who after retiring in 2016, a lot like Edge did in 2011, Daniel Bryan got cleared, and he was in the storyline with Shane McMahon against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Charlotte Flair defeated Asuka's 900-day undefeated streak in WWE between NXT and the main roster to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship in a booking angle that was shocking, not only because of the result, but because it was number two on the card, which is historically the worst spot on the entire WrestleMania card. And I didn't think either woman deserved that. AJ Styles defeated Shinsuke Nakamura. This was very hyped at the time. Shinsuke Nakamura won the Royal Rumble in 2018. He was coming in for a dream match against AJ Styles, which many pro wrestling fans were excited about, though not really me, because I was not in love with Shinsuke Nakamura's wrestling style at the time. Again, I'm a pure WWE guy. I haven't watched a lot of New Japan stuff. So they did have a very underwhelming match, which of course led to Nakamura turning on AJ Styles afterwards. And then Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns just had a finisher fest when many people thought after Roman could not finish his story, quote unquote, if you will, at WrestleMania 31 against Lesnar because of the Seth Rollins cash in. They ran it back 3 years later, and Lesnar still beat Roman Reigns. Again, very underwhelming development. And I think that's why this WrestleMania gets a bad knack. Because Cena and Undertaker only went for 3 minutes after it was anticipated that these guys were going to go for 15 and 20 minutes and have a real match. Daniel Bryan did not get a lot of action in his return. Asuka lost her streak on the second match of the night. AJ defeated Nakamura, maybe the wrong winner in an underwhelming match. Lesnar defeated Reigns. Again, wrong winner in an underwhelming match. Now we get to WrestleMania 35. Of course, this one was in New Jersey, the same site as WrestleMania 29. And this one, to me, obviously, everybody knows about the women's triple threat main event: Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch becoming two belts. But the most notable thing of this event for me was Kofi Mania. And Kofi Kingston was, the most fan happy thing that the fans wanted at this event. Him defeating the Planet's champion Daniel Bryan, who alongside Eric Rowan was doing great on the SmackDown brand. But after Kofi Kingston had to replace an injured Mustafa Ali in the SmackDown Elimination Chamber match the month before, Kofi Mania momentum was riding as high as the Yes Movement had 5 years prior. And Kofi Mania, which was, halfway through the show, may have been the most memorable thing to occur on this very good WrestleMania, which featured a surprise where Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar, many thought this was going to be one of the closing matches of the night. Well, it opened the show, and Rollins, with a low blow with the referee distracted, was able to have three curb stomps on Lesnar. And after Lesnar conquered Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 34, Seth Rollins became the Beast Slayer at WrestleMania 35. Batista's last match at, as a wrestler occurred at this event. He took on his best friend, Triple H. Of course, the story of this was on Ric Flair's birthday, Batista attacked Ric Flair. Batista was jealous because all he wanted was a match with Triple H and, to finish his career on his terms. This led to the infamous "Give Me What I Want" promo between Hunter and Batista, and they had a good match with Triple H ultimately becoming the winner after Ric Flair gave him a sledgehammer to use, and Hunter was able to hit Batista with it, jumping over steel steps before pedigreeing the animal on the steps to win the matchup. Roman Reigns, in his return from leukemia, took on Drew McIntyre. Now, I wanted to highlight this because we all know what Reigns and McIntyre would eventually turn into 2, 3, 4 years later. To see these guys in a random WrestleMania match, to me, is wild. Then, if you forget, Shane McMahon, after the return with Daniel Bryan, I should say, at WrestleMania 34, in late 2018, as the SmackDown general manager, Shane McMahon, alongside ring announcer Greg Hamilton at the time, would call him the best in the world. Shane McMahon. in a weird, in my opinion, push for Shane McMahon when you look back on it. Again, a lot of this stuff is not so strange when it's obviously currently going on WB television. But when Shane McMahon gets a 6 month push that leads to a Falls Count Anywhere match, a very good one, by the way, with The Miz at WrestleMania 35, which led to The Miz pushing Shane McMahon off that platform. But McMahon landed on top of Miz for the victory in very weird booking, in my opinion. Vince obviously having his son go over against a babyface Miz, which again was very unusual. Very good match, good feud. Again, fun mania, just some weird stuff. I think the weirdest thing being that Kurt Angle wanted John Cena to retire him, and instead of that, John Cena came out and did the Doctor of Thugonomics and did a bit with Elias, who just had so much potential. And in my opinion, both Vince McMahon and Triple H squandered the booking of Elias slash Ezekiel. I loved his character in WWE because WWE did stand for Walk with Elias. But instead of Mr. Angle wanting to retire on his terms, Kurt Angle lost to Baron Corbin. And what did that do for Baron Corbin? It got him about two straight WWE Championship or Universal Championship, I should say, matches against Seth Rollins. One that included Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch taking on Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans. Yeah, WWE booking was very strange in 2019. But Baron Corbin did retire Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 35. Again, I thought it was a very good Mania. This was one of the few Manias that I watched with friends, Michael Reiner included. We had a blast. It was a good show. But again, I just thought it went a little bit long. It was a very long show. It was over a 5 hour show. And I think that by the time you got to the main event between Rousey, Flair, and Lynch, everybody was just exhausted, including Michael Cole, who, if you hear the call back on it, could barely speak at the event. Then we get to WrestleMania 37. This was, of course, a highly anticipated Mania because of the fact that even during the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously, Florida was one of those states during the height of the pandemic that had less restrictions than other states. So WWE did allow with mask on, and it looked very weird when you're watching the event, I will say. But this was when 25% of a capacity stadium in Tampa that had just hosted the Super Bowl between the Bucks and the Chiefs, the one where Tampa destroyed Kansas City. They just allowed about 25% in the same capacity. And so this WrestleMania meant that for the first time since March 9th, 2020, it'd be 1 month, 1 year, 1 day, the WWE Universe would return. And one of the most memorable moments of night one, I would argue, would be the opening match, because the opening match with that crowd back for the first time was a huge deal. And the first entrance you heard at WrestleMania 37 was the Scottish Warrior, the former WWE champion at this time, Drew McIntyre, who was looking to get his championship back from the almighty Bobby Lashley. Now, the way they got here was very strange. McIntyre wound up winning an Elimination Chamber match at that premium live event to retain the WWE Championship. Afterwards, Bobby Lashley would attack McIntyre, which allowed at the time the Money in the Bank winner, The Miz, who had won the contract a few months prior after defeating Otis, who ended up being, of course, the Money in the Bank winner in 2020. Again, another strange COVID-19 booking decision by WWE when you look back at it at that moment in time. Miz would cash in successfully on McIntyre. He'd become the new WWE champion. But then 8 days later on Raw, Miz's reign would end as Bobby Lashley would become the new WWE champion, which led to McIntyre getting his rematch against Lashley and not The Miz, or not making a triple threat. Again, very strange, and we'll get to what they did with The Miz here in a second. But I thought it was also strange, And no disrespect to Bobby Lashley, who went on to have a long championship run, a championship run that would last until September when Big E would cash in the Money in the Bank contract on Lashley. But Drew McIntyre would pass out here. He would not tap out, which would then lead to a couple more rematches, including a Hell in a Cell match at the Hell in a Cell pay per view in 2021 between McIntyre and Lashley. But the fact that it was the first match and they did not give the fans exactly what they wanted was a curious decision with last week going over on McIntyre. I think one of the big things of night one was Cesaro. He got his big one-on-one match. It was the first time he ever had a one-on-one match at WrestleMania, and it was against the visionary Seth Rollins. And Cesaro was very over at this time. The swing was getting hugely over within the WWE Universe, even more than it had been in the past. And this would lead to not only a Cesaro win, but Cesaro the next month challenging Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. How about Braun Strowman throwing Shane McMahon from on top of a steel cage, which of course ultimately led to a Strowman victory in that match? Then you add Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks, a wonderful main event, a very historic main event. It was the first time two black women have main evented, nonetheless going one-on-one at WrestleMania 37. You could see the emotion in both girls' eyes before the matchup, which of course led to Bianca Belair getting her breakout moment. And we've seen what Bianca has done on the biggest stage of them all before. This time using her braid as a whip, which of course is legal, leading into the KOD. Bianca Belair ending night one on top. WWE creating a new star in the EST who would win the Royal Rumble from the number 3 position to get this opportunity from the boss. Almost. I don't know if you guys remember at this time. He was AJ Styles' bodyguard, and he had never competed in a match before. So it was one of those moments where it was a wow moment to see this 7'3/4 gigantic monster move at the speed, size, and power that Amos had done when AJ Styles and Amos took out the New Day to win the Raw Tag Team Championships. And then you had The Miz, who, as I mentioned, went from being WWE champion to teaming back up with his man John Morrison against Damian Priest, who was a babyface at the time, starting to get a little bit over, as well as the man, the myth himself, the man who would eventually fight Damian Priest this past year at Backlash in a San Juan, Puerto Rico street fight. Bad Bunny, who is arguably still the most popular artist in the world next to Taylor Swift. He was gaining popularity at the time, and Bad Bunny really impressed inside the squared circle. He was another celebrity to make the transition from acting, singing wherever he was to WWE and doing it splendidly. A lot of moves and including a Canadian destroyer on the outside to John Morrison. Then we get to WrestleMania 37, Night 2. And Night 2 was arguably most known for that Roman Reigns, Edge, Daniel Bryan triple threat main event for the Universal Championship. At this time, it was the most fear that the tribal chief, the head of the table, Roman Reigns, had in losing his championship. You had Reigns as a pure heel, Daniel Bryan as a pure babyface, and then Edge as this tweener, who, after going the gauntlet, after returning from his torn pec that he suffered against Randy Orton in that greatest wrestling match ever at Payback 2020. Edge would return to the Royal Rumble from the number 1 position and last everybody to get this opportunity. But when Daniel Bryan challenged Roman Reigns for a match at Fastlane for the title, Edge would interfere. Edge did not want Daniel Bryan getting involved in his business with the tribal chief at WrestleMania, and the triple threat match was born, and it led to a great match. And again, there was a lot of interest in this match. Could Edge, 10 years to the day, 10 years, April 11th, 2011, retires. April 11th, 2021, wins a championship again in WWE. And as we know, it was not meant to be, as Roman Reigns continues his historic reign by stacking Edge and Daniel Bryan after the right hand main event Jey Uso got involved. Night 2 also featured Randy Orton against The Fiend when Alexa Bliss turned on Bray Wyatt. Randy Orton would RKO The Fiend, and obviously Orton and Bray Wyatt had history before, meeting at WrestleMania 33, meeting in a House of Horrors match the next month at Payback. Randy would pick up the win, and this would actually be the second to last match that Bray Wyatt would ever wrestle on WWE television. The other match being the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match at the Royal Rumble event in 2023. So this match kicked off night 2. It ended up being Bray Wyatt's last WrestleMania encounter. Again, very, very sad to think about. God bless Bray, Bo, Joanna, the entire Wyndham family. We miss Bray Wyatt dearly, and just cannot believe that the Fireflies, the Fiend, the Funhouse, never coming back. And then I think the other memorable part of night 2 was, I don't know if most people remember, Apollo Crews getting a huge heel push here. He was in a Nigerian street fight against the Intercontinental Champion at the time, Big E, for the championship, where this is where Commander Aziz would make his debut and help Crews win the championship from the member of the New Day, who was on SmackDown at this time doing his own thing, while the New Day were doing their thing on Raw. This Mania also featured Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, with Logan Paul involved. Speaking of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, we are now halfway through the countdown. So, number 5 on our list, WrestleMania 39. This past WrestleMania, again, I'm sorry if you're so sick of hearing my voice. I completely apologize. But we're halfway through with this. So let's get to WrestleMania 39, night 1. Obviously, the most memorable part of this event, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn on night 1, taking out the Usos, who at the time were the longest reigning undisputed tag team champions in history. The history between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, constantly fighting for years. The history with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline, and the turning on Roman Reigns at the Rumble after Roman Reigns beat down his friend Kevin Owens, to Kevin Owens not being so sure if he can trust Sami Zayn, to Sami Zayn delivering that final Haluva kick for Sami and Kevin Owens to be the ones to dethrone the Usos, for the crowd to be so happy and hopeful that Cody Rhodes would defeat the Tribal Chief the next night. Then, mad that they did not get the main event spot, Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley absolutely tore down the house for, at the time, the SmackDown Women's Championship, as Rhea Ripley, who had gone from the number 1 position, first woman ever to do that, go from the number 1 position to win the Women's Royal Rumble, took down the Queen, and now still holds the Women's World Championship as she heads into WrestleMania 40 against the man, Becky Lynch. Rey Mysterio, after Dominic Mysterio, his deadbeat son of a bitch son, after he turned on Rey and the Rated R Superstar Edge at Clash of the Castle in September and joined Rhea Ripley, Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and the Judgment Day. Rey Mysterio finally had enough a few weeks prior on SmackDown when Dom told his mother to shut up. It led to a blood feud between Rey and Dom, where Rey would not only spank his son, but thanks to Bad Bunny, get revenge over his bastardly son, Dominic Mysterio, on night 1. Logan Paul, who had just made his debut a year earlier at WrestleMania 38 when he teamed up with The Miz against the Mysterios. He took on Seth Rollins in a very entertaining match. This was right about the time when Seth Rollins' song, "Oh, Whoa, Oh, Oh, Whoa, come on, and obviously Rollins would end up putting KSI through the announce table before curb stomping Logan Paul for the victory. Alpha Academy, the Street Profits, the Viking Raiders, and Braun Strowman and Ricochet had a fatal four-way showcase match between four tag teams that didn't have a lot to do. It was a better match than people expected, especially for it being the number two match on the card. And then Austin Theory, who at this point in time of the recording does not have a spot for WrestleMania. Now, he very well could be involved in the six-person or the six tag team 12-person ladder match for the tag titles at WrestleMania 40. Austin Theory is the United States champion, opened and shocked the world by hitting John Cena with a low blow from behind before putting 8 down and going over John Cena at WrestleMania 39 to open the entire show. Again, a little bit of a shock. Your first match of WrestleMania weekend, Theory steals the victory from John Cena, and they really haven't done much with Theory since. Let's be honest. Let's go to WrestleMania 39 Night 2 because everybody knows about Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. If you've been a wrestling fan for the last year, I don't need to dive into Reigns and Rhodes. Gunther, Sheamus, McIntyre had one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, hands down. It might have stole the show. We thought Flair and Ripley stole the show on night one. Well, Gunther, Sheamus, and Drew stole the show on night two. Five-star triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship, which was won and retained by the ring general Gunther. Edge and Finn Balor. It was Brood Edge against Demon Finn Balor, finishing their year-long almost feud, where Edge, who had started the Judgment Day at WrestleMania 38 when Damian Priest helped him defeat AJ Styles. Then a couple months later, when Finn Balor joined the group, Edge was excommunicated. Now, Edge, a year later, was able to end Balor inside Hell in a Cell. Bianca Belair retained her Raw Women's Championship against Asuka in a very physical, a very good, entertaining match. And then Brock Lesnar and Amos had a match that many people did not think was going to be good. And this was another case of Amos showcasing his ability. He put on a great match with Lesnar, which of course ended with Lesnar F5ing the incredible specimen that is Amos. Again, a very fun, entertaining Mania. I would argue that at least in the two-night format, outside of WrestleMania 38, which we'll get to, it was one of the best WrestleManias that I've seen in a long time. A lot of good story building behind it, a lot of good hype behind it, very good matches. There was not a lot of bad results for this. Again, outside of Cena Theory in the opener of night one, in my opinion. Now, WrestleMania 33 is memorable for me for a lot of reasons. I love the theme song of this event, which was Green Light by Pitbull. It was the ultimate thrill ride with a roller coaster in Orlando, Florida. It was at Camping World Stadium. The former host of WrestleMania 24, which also had a very good Mania, which featured Cena, Orton, Triple H, Triple Threat, Big Show, and Floyd Money Mayweather. Kane winning the ECW championship from Chavo Guerrero in about 9 seconds. JBL and Finley, that Belfast Brawl match. And then, of course, Edge and Undertaker main eventing for the World Heavyweight Championship. So this WrestleMania to me has a special place in my heart. There's a lot of great moments from this card, including an incredible banger of an opener between Shane McMahon and AJ Styles, which they did not have to have. After nearly a decade away from the company, the return of Matt and Jeff, the Hardy Boys, who were announced by the host, The New Day, and it made it a fatal four-way match for the Raw Tag Team titles. It was going to be a ladder match, and the Hardy Boys came in. They won that ladder match, and they made their triumphant return to WWE. How about Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt? I mentioned Orton and The Fiend at WrestleMania 37. Well, WrestleMania 33, these two guys battled for the WWE Championship. Prior to this match, Randy Orton on an episode of SmackDown would burn Bray Wyatt's house down. This being after Randy Orton had convinced Bray Wyatt that he was a new member of the Wyatt family. Of course, in the WWE draft, when Eric Rowan and Braun Strowman would go to Monday Night Raw, Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt went to SmackDown. So with two of his Wyatt family members out of commission, Randy Orton essentially took the role of Strowman in this scenario. Randy Orton and Luke Harper would win the SmackDown Tag Team titles at TLC of 2016. Randy Orton would help Bray Wyatt in the 2017 Royal Rumble match, which would come down to Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, and Bray Wyatt. And after Reigns would eliminate Wyatt, his longtime rival, Orton would eliminate Reigns. Randy Orton would go on to win before ultimately turning on Bray Wyatt and taking his WWE Championship at WrestleMania 33. Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. Boy, did they make up for their disaster of a match that was WrestleMania 20. We all know the stories. Fans knew Lesnar and Goldberg were leaving the company, and even though Stone Cold was the special guest referee in the match, the fans did not care. Well, in the same sense here, Goldberg returned at Survivor Series 2016. He absolutely destroyed Lesnar in about a minute and 30 seconds, shocking the WWE Universe, but very happily as it was in Goldberg's hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. Fast forward at the Royal Rumble, Goldberg would eliminate Brock Lesnar. This would set up a match that certainly did not need the Universal Championship, which we'll get to here in a second. But Brock Lesnar would win the Universal Championship from Goldberg at WrestleMania 33, a title he would hold for over 500 days before losing it to Roman Reigns at SummerSlam of 2018. And up until that point, Lesnar had the longest Universal Championship reign in history, a title that did not have a lot of prestige after Finn Balor obviously dropped it the night after winning it, making the title cursed until the tribal chief would hold on to it for what is now, at the time of this recording, 1,301 days. So Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens were drafted to Monday Night Raw in the 2016 WWE Draft. And they were a tag team, and they were in a match against Enzo and Cass. If you remember that great tag team, SAWFT. So at SummerSlam that year, and their friendship and their tag team just kept growing, and it kept getting over with the WWE Universe, especially when Kevin Owens would win the Universal Championship in that fatal four-way match on Raw. That also involved Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and I'm forgetting the last individual in that match. One of the rare things I'm forgetting in this video. But if you remember, Triple H pedigrees Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins thinks he's going to help him win the title. Then Triple H pedigrees Rollins and essentially gives the strap to Kevin Owens. But eventually, Kevin Owens would turn on Chris Jericho, and then Chris Jericho would cost Kevin Owens the Universal Championship against Goldberg at Fastlane, which would lead us to a Jericho KO match, which would be for Jericho's United States Championship at WrestleMania. A match that was good, but at least with the story, did not deserve to be match number 2 on the card. There was thought here that Chris Jericho, who went very long in the Royal Rumble match that year, maybe Jericho wins the Rumble and Jericho challenges KO for the Universal Championship. And this match was just, it was the biggest story on Raw for almost the entire, 8-month build here with this match to WrestleMania. Many fans, including myself, thought it got disrespected with its placement on the card. Then Roman Reigns. Remember, going into WrestleMania 33, Roman Reigns had main evented WrestleMania 31. He had main evented WrestleMania 32, winning the WWE World Championship from Triple H. This year, Roman Reigns eliminated The Undertaker from the 2017 Royal Rumble, which set up Roman Reigns against The Undertaker in the main event of this show in a no-holds-barred match. And Roman Reigns won this match. He became the second person ever to defeat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Of course, the first being Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30. And the reason why this match was booked to be the main event is because it was long rumored that The Undertaker, who has been really struggling at the time with hip issues, he needed double hip replacement surgery. The Undertaker did not look the same it really did feel like The Undertaker's career could have been over. And Undertaker would leave his hat and boots in the middle of the ring before descending down to end the show. It really felt like Roman Reigns was turning the corner to be that guy in the company, to be the next John Cena, to be the next face of the company. Of course, after the night on WrestleMania, Roman Reigns comes out and says, "This is my yard now," to a chorus of boos after he was unable to speak for about 10 minutes. But at the end of the deal here, Roman Reigns retires The Undertaker. Main event of WrestleMania 33, the ultimate thrill ride. And then John Cena, Nikki Bella would defeat Maurice and The Miz. John Cena would propose to Nikki Bella in the middle of the ring. Of course, the Bella said yes. As we know, their relationship did not work out, but I think it's memorable, and it's one of the most memorable moments for me at this WrestleMania. John Cena was not in a prominent feud. Remember him and Miz 6 years earlier, WrestleMania 27, the WWE Championship. Now they have their girlfriends and wives involved, and Cena proposes to Nikki Bella in front of the whole world at WrestleMania 33. We have we have three WrestleManias to go. WrestleMania 31 is in the top three, in my opinion, of WrestleManias in the 30s. Of course, we opened up with an Intercontinental Championship wire match, which was an absolute banger, which was won by the new champion, Daniel Bryan. Wade Barrett entered in this match, and among the participants were Dean Ambrose, Luke Harper, among others. But Daniel Bryan, who suffered an injury after WrestleMania 30. We know all about it. We know how he had to relinquish the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. He came back and won the Intercontinental Championship in a very good opening match for this WrestleMania that took place in Santa Clara in March 29th, 2015. Actually, the last WrestleMania to take place in March. We all know about one of the best RKOs of all time, the incredible RKO the Viper Randy Orton put on Seth Rollins to win that match. But that led to the ice of the century in the main event, where Seth Rollins would run down and cash in the Money in the Bank, make it a triple threat match between Lesnar and Roman Reigns, their first in what would be many encounters, and one of the most memorable moments in WrestleMania history. Seth Rollins, swinging the championship above his head as he stole the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. First time ever somebody had cashed in the Money in the Bank, not only at WrestleMania, but mid-match as well to win the championship. WWE and WCW went full tilt when Triple H took on Sting in a no holds barred match, which of course involved the battle of DX and the NWO, but Triple H would ultimately hit Sting with a sledgehammer and win the contest. But Triple H was not done yet, because he had a mix up later in the evening when announcing the WrestleMania attendance record. Guess who came out to confront the game? The one, the only Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who, after teasing Triple H for multiple months that they could square up one on one in the ring again, The Rock was ready to kick the Cerebral Assassin's ass in the middle of the ring at WrestleMania 31. But when Stephanie McMahon would go to slap Dwayne would bring in the well known at this point UFC fighter Ronda Rousey to the stage, and Ronda Rousey would take out Stephanie McMahon, stand tall with The Rock, and what would essentially be Ronda Rousey's pre WWE debut, before she debuted, as I mentioned before, at WrestleMania 34, even with Kurt Angle against Triple H and Steph. Then, after losing his streak to Brock Lesnar the year before, no one had seen The Undertaker, but there was a new quote unquote Undertaker in town. And after losing to John Cena at WrestleMania 30, the new face of fear, Bray Wyatt, the new master of darkness, wanted to take out the dead man, The Undertaker. He kept calling him out. The Undertaker would answer his challenge, and ultimately, Tombstone Bray Wyatt. A man Taker would go on to mention how much respect he had. It. Taker talked about how that match with Bray Wyatt, how much it meant to him after not remembering his match with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30 due to the concussion he suffered. Taker and Wyatt, looking back on it once again, just such a special occasion. WrestleMania 31. And then the United States Championship match featured John Cena and Rusev. Now, Rusev was a tremendous heel at this time alongside Lana. You know, them being of Russian descent, obviously, USA versus Russia has always been a WWE go to babyface versus the heel in years past. But this Rusev was dominant, came in on a tank. You know, faced John Cena the previous month at Fastlane, but Cena did not tap out. That was a disqualification where Rusev held on to his submission way too long, and Cena was looking for revenge. Felt like Rusev was disrespecting the United States, and Cena wanted to end Rusev's undefeated streak. That he did after a great match with the AA. That would lead us to the John Cena United States Open Challenge for a few months, which of course ended when Kevin Owens, the debuting on the main roster, Kevin Owens, um, who was the NXT champion at the time, would defeat John Cena a few months later down the line. But Cena and Rusev, another great match from a really great in-ring WrestleMania, in my opinion. And the theme song, The Rise, Money in the Power, the setting of it being during the day in California, going from the bright lights to the darkness at night, WrestleMania 31 was an all time. Speaking of WrestleMania 38, this might be a top three WrestleMania of all time. I have WrestleMania 38 as a course number two on this list because I don't know if any WrestleMania could top number one. But how about night one? Not only the return of Stone Cold Steve Austin, who had not been seen wrestling in a WWE ring since WrestleMania 19, when he gave basically The Rock one last encounter. The Rock was able to overcome Stone Cold Steve Austin finally at WrestleMania and get that win at WrestleMania 19. Well, Kevin Owens was calling everybody in Texas stupid. He was calling out the biggest names of Texas to battle him in WrestleMania 38 to get Kevin Owens on the card. And not only did he do that, Stone Cold Steve Austin not only showed up on the Kevin Owens show at WrestleMania 38, which was, of course, stowed as the most stupendous WrestleMania of all time, but Stone Cold returned and had an absolute banger of a retirement no holds barred match with Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens would again go on to main event WrestleMania 39 the next year. And as my buddy Michael Reiner had pointed out about a week to a week and a half, after our recording of that podcast aired, Kevin Owens may be one of the most underrated individuals, not only in WWE currently, but in WWE history. Night one of this event is also known for the return of the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes, who shockingly, after starting up All Elite Wrestling alongside the Young Bucks and Tony Khan in 2019, would actually leave AEW in 2022 and return all after he pretty much vowed he would never return to WWE after leaving as Stardust in 2016. Cody Rhodes, by his own admission, knew he had to go outside of WWE, knew he had to make a name for himself, knew he could pull a Drew McIntyre and come back, and boy, did he ever do it. As Seth Rollins was looking for an opponent for this event, the boss promised the visionary that he would have a match at WrestleMania 38 and to just go in the ring on night one. And out came the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes to his Kingdom theme song, to his AEW look. He looked like a megastar. He looked like a guy that was ready to take WWE to new heights. And 2 years later now, Cody Rhodes, as we all know, is looking to finish his story. Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. This story came about after Becky Lynch returned at SummerSlam of 2021 after being out for over a year on maternity leave in 2020. Becky Lynch would return and defeat the then SmackDown Women's Champion in 20 seconds. Well, because of a dumb title swap WWE would do in the draft between Becky Lynch, the SmackDown Women's Champion at the time, Charlotte Flair, the Raw Women's Champion at the time, Becky Lynch would become the Raw Women's Champion, and Bianca Belair, who was looking to get her revenge on Becky Lynch, would do so in an incredible moment. Back to back years, Bianca Belair had the best women's match on the card. First with Sasha Banks at WrestleMania 37, and she gets her moment with big time Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 38. Logan Paul. We were not so sure how Logan Paul was going to do in a WWE ring. Of course, he is from Cleveland by way of Puerto Rico. Miz is from Cleveland by way of Hollywood, California at this point. So the two Cleveland boys would team up. They'd form a friendship. They took on Rey and Dominic Mysterio, who at this point were getting along. And Logan Paul and Miz not only won this match, but they completely shocked the world with how well Logan Paul picked up the sport. Logan Paul was tremendous. He looked like a 10-year veteran in the WWE ring and would launch himself to where not only would he face The Miz at SummerSlam that year, but he would go on later in the year in November at Crown Jewel to have a match with the undisputed WWE Universal Champion, Roman Reigns. Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey. This was a match that many fans were looking forward to. This was a match that many people thought Ronda Rousey would be crowned as the SmackDown Women's Champion after returning to WWE after leaving WWE at the end of WrestleMania 35. Rousey would return at the 2022 Royal Rumble. She would win said match, go on and challenge Flair, but after a very good match due to a ref bump, a spear from Flair would lead to a screw job victory, with Charlotte Flair also pulling the tights, retaining the SmackDown Women's Championship, which would lead to their best match, that being the I Quit match at Backlash the following month, where Ronda Rousey would then capture the gold. Now, in my opinion, night 2 of WrestleMania 38 had two of the most fun matches in WrestleMania history. Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville. And everybody thought this was a joke. People thought this was classic Vince McMahon, sports entertainment, yada, yada, yada. It looked like straight out of a Jackass movie, and Sami Zayn got his ass kicked from all the props, from the mousetrap table to the hand in the face to Wee Man beating his ass, and Michael Cole and Pat McAfee sold the hell out of not only that match, out of that show, which I thought was again one of the most incredible matches. I was watching with my brother at the time, who was a very casual fan, only watches the big WWE premium live events, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, etc. Per year, and we were just laughing our ass off. It was one of the most fun times I ever had as a wrestling fan. And then later that night, Pat McAfee would make his WrestleMania debut with an incredible entrance inside Dallas Cowboy Stadium, where he would punt a football. Michael Cole becoming the biggest babyface for his guy, Pat McAfee, after Michael Cole and Pat McAfee basically reinvented commentary there for WWE. They were the best WWE commentary team that has been seen in WWE easily since the Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler days. Not only would the former NFL punter impress and defeat Austin Theory in an incredible match, but then he would go on to face Vince McMahon, who then, after Vince defeated Pat McAfee, would then get stunned by Stone Cold Steve Austin. But as Pat McAfee likes to say, we don't like to talk about that second match. Roman Reigns would become the undisputed WWE Universal Champion night 2 of WrestleMania. It was title for title, winner take all, built as the biggest WrestleMania match of all time between WWE Champion Brock Lesnar, Universal Champion Roman Reigns. This story was set up because Roman Reigns had COVID at day 1, 2022. And whether you want to believe the reports or not, at that event, which if you guys remember at that time, Roman Reigns had turned on Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman had aligned with Brock Lesnar. The reports say that Roman Reigns would have lost the Undisputed Championship on that night, day one, 2022, to the Beast, and we would have never had Reigns versus Rhodes 2. We would have never had Reigns and The Rock versus Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. None of what is currently going on in WWE right now would happen if Roman Reigns did not get COVID, like I had actually that night, day one, 2022. Plans had changed. Brock Lesnar was instituted in the WWE Championship, which was already a multi-man match that featured the likes of Big E, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Brock Lesnar would be inserted into the match. It would become a fatal five-way. Lesnar would win the match. Not only that, but Lesnar would go on in an elimination chamber to defend the championship. Or excuse me, no, after that, Lesnar would lose the championship to Bobby Lashley at the Royal Rumble thanks to Roman Reigns' interference. Lesnar would get the championship back from Lashley the next month inside the Elimination Chamber to set up this match. Where we are at today, Reigns, Lesnar, free at WrestleMania. Lesnar had one victory. The other was obviously thrown out because of the Rollins cash in. Reigns got his victory here. Edge formed the Judgment Day after turning heel and defeating AJ Styles in a match that was a little bit underwhelming, but again, it was such a dream match. One of the I guess theories that people put out here over the past few weeks about AJ Styles. AJ Styles has had dream matches with the likes of Shinsuke Nakamura and Edge at WrestleMania that have actually underdelivered, but his better performances were obviously that Boneyard match against The Undertaker, WrestleMania 33 against Shane McMahon. I thought an incredible night two opener between RK Bro, who was maybe the most popular tag team on the planet at that time. The Street Profits Alpha Academy took place. RK Bro retaining the Raw Tag Team titles, as well as a significant moment at this WrestleMania was Triple H, who we had learned over the summer of 2021 had gone into cardiac arrest, was fighting for his life after a few months earlier facing Randy Orton in Saudi Arabia, which turned out to be Triple H's last match. The game would lay down his boots in the ring at WrestleMania 38. So I thought this WrestleMania 38 was built up to be absolutely stupendous. And with blinding lights, sacrifices, the theme song with Johnny Knoxville, Sami Zayn, Pat McAfee, and Vince, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the return of Cody Rhodes, the debut of Logan Paul, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, putting on a banger for the Raw Women's Championship. I thought it absolutely lived up to the hype. And then obviously WrestleMania 30. There's not a lot to not say about this event. We all know it was in New Orleans, April 6th, 2020 or 2014, excuse me. WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan not only defeats Triple H, he goes on main event, defeats Randy Orton, defeats Batista in that triple threat match. The yes movement was never as high as it was at that point in time. The whole world wanted to see Daniel Bryan, who was constantly getting screwed over by the Authority and storyline, was constantly being cheered for this years prior to this by the fans begging for Daniel Bryan to become the next face of the company. Daniel Bryan at his moment at the 30th anniversary of WrestleMania. And then obviously the streak. Brock Lesnar defeating The Undertaker, who, as we mentioned, was concussed. It was not the greatest match of all time because of that, but it obviously had one of the most significant milestones in the history of not only WrestleMania, not only in the history of WWE, but the history of the sport as well. It also featured a great opening between generations of the past. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, and The Rock chatting it up. Could we see something like that potentially at WrestleMania 40? And then also, it was the debut of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal when Cesaro would throw the Big Show over the top rope. But this WrestleMania 30, obviously, it was the 30th anniversary of WrestleMania, but Daniel Bryan and The Undertaker streak, without a doubt, makes it one of the most all-time WrestleManias ever and has to be number one on this list. So, to recap, after all that I've said here today, these are my top 10 WrestleManias of the past decade, my top 10 WrestleManias of the 30s. Number 10, the COVID WrestleMania, WrestleMania 36. Number 9, WrestleMania 32 in Dallas. Number 8, 34 in New Orleans. Number 7, 35 at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. 6, the one where fans returned, WrestleMania 37 in Tampa. Number 5, WrestleMania 39 from this past year at SoFi in Inglewood, California. Number 4, WrestleMania 33, Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida. Number 3, WrestleMania 31 at the brand new, at the time, Levi Stadium in San Francisco, California. Number 2, WrestleMania 38 back in Jerry's World in Dallas, Texas. And my number 1 WrestleMania of the 30s, WrestleMania 30, New Orleans, the WrestleMania of the streak and the Yes Movement.